The hills were alive in Salzburg, not with the sound of music, not, contrary to my good friend Peter Oborn's prediction here just last Friday, that Mrs. Merkel and Mrs. May would kiss and the deal would be done. In fact, the sound with which the hills of Salzburg were alive was the bark of a firing squad. The picture I saw, I will never forget it, had the members of the EU leadership sitting in a circular table with a spotlight coming from above. They looked to me like the board of directors of Smersh, the evil organization in the James Bond films. And that, dear listener, is what I consider them to be. I believe that Theresa May has been negotiating with the unnegotiable. She has been seeking to reason with the unreasonable. Because the essential point is this: the European Union cannot afford to allow any country to go free from its grip, because many countries in the European Union, if it could be demonstrated that that was possible, would themselves be for the off. That's why the European leaders have clung absolutely like a limpet to what they call the four freedoms. The four freedoms to exploit, the four freedoms to create a European space which enshrines neoliberal economics, austerity politics, and the supremacy of the European Central Bank. They can't allow an end to freedom of movement, as it's called. But what is really at risk is the right of any sovereign country in the European Union to decide who, out of hundreds of millions of EU citizens, can come and live and work in their country. Thus, the EU is the negation of national sovereignty. Now, I was a disciple of the Right Honourable Tony Benn. He argued for all of the decades that I was at his side that we needed to leave the European Union if we wanted to recover our democracy, our right as a sovereign people to forge our own path, to govern ourselves and our economy as we democratically decided to do. And that is literally impossible. I don't mean difficult, I don't mean tricky, I mean impossible. It is impossible for a Jeremy Corbyn, John McDonnell government to pursue the fiscal and economic policies which they have adjudged to be vital for British people's futures. They may not do so if we remain within the European Union. So, I knew that the hills would not be alive with the sound of music. I knew that my good friend Peter Oborn was talking through his hat last Friday. And we'll play you some of the actuality to let you hear my scepticism. So I was not remotely surprised when the EU leadership treated the British Prime Minister not with disrespect, but with contempt. A 10-minute slot. 10 minutes! I can hardly get my name and address out in 10 minutes. She was supposed to deliver in 10 minutes the case for her Chequers proposals, which she has not been able to convince even the Conservative Party of. Not even her own government. She lost two of her biggest beasts from the cabinet over Chequers. So the Tories don't want Chequers. The EU didn't want it either. And here's the rub, dear listener. We are now in a situation where nothing can pass the House of Commons. A no-deal Brexit will be voted down by the entirety, virtually, of the Labour opposition and scores, if not hundreds, of Conservatives and others. So a no-deal Brexit cannot pass the House of Commons. Now, I know that it's the default position, and it would not be a substantive motion, but you can still negate a default position by a negative vote in the House of Commons. I'll explain that later if people want to know the niceties. In any case, if the government lost its default position vote, there would immediately have to be a motion of no confidence in the government, and the government would lose it. So we are now in general election territory. We haven't crossed that threshold yet, so I'm free to speak my mind, and here is my mind. Theresa May cannot govern this country. This country is adrift. It is adrift on an ocean of incompetence, inequality, which is now worse than it was in 1914. Just think about that. Incompetence, which has left us entirely bereft of any national leadership at all. This Prime Minister cannot provide it. The alternative, conservative Prime Ministers of Boris Johnson and what's his name? Jeremy Hunt. Hunt, I tell you. Are you serious? Jeremy Hunt as Winston Churchill at a time of national peril? Please. Boris Johnson, he may be the one that they plump for. But even he will have to face a general election, because we will be in, to continue the nautical metaphor, entirely uncharted waters. We would have crashed out by default of the EU without a deal. And inevitably, all the consequences of that would follow. You could go on in a desultory way, dealing with this issue or that issue when it arose. But it would be 1940. It would be ourselves alone. It would be the enemy at the Channel ports, blocking your imports, stopping your exports. It would be chaos. And Boris Johnson doesn't do chaos all that well, in my opinion. So a general election is ineluctable, inescapable, and I believe the case for it is unanswerable. Moreover, I've been saying that for quite some time, because if you go back through the back shows of the mother of all talk shows, you'll realize that I have been saying this not for months but for 2 years. We should have left on day one, when Jeremy Corbyn proposed that we press the button of Article 50 on day one, the day after the referendum. That's when we should have done it. We should have sent, proverbially, an email saying, we're leaving, our people have decided, we're off, we mean you no harm, and we presume you mean us no harm. We will place no tariffs or barriers on your goods and services, and we presume you will place none on ours. We will continue to cooperate with you on security, terrorism, police matters, and we will implement standards of food, of hygiene, of the environment that will be no less than yours. And if we have the right government, will be even better than yours. And at that point, we should have been going around the country and going around the world, rallying our people for our new future, leaving the EU and joining the world. That's what we should have done. So, as I often say, being half an Irishman, I'm entitled to say, as the man did, no doubt apocryphally, when asked, the road to Dublin, oh, I wouldn't have started from here. But now we are here. What's going to be done? Theresa May says she will not break up her country, although Britain had no compunction about breaking up Ireland's country. This partition of just 6 counties of somebody else's country has to end. And now is the time to end it. Are we really saying we're going to crash out without a deal to please 350,000 voters of the Democratic Unionist Party? To please Ian Paisley Jr. if he's back from Colombo. The only sane border between Britain and the EU runs down the middle of the Irish Sea. The majority of people in the 6 counties voted to remain in the EU. The majority of people in the Irish Republic are mad for the EU. You don't have to be Einstein to work out what should happen next. That majority in the north, in the 6 counties, should join their compatriots in a united Ireland. Problem solved. And all the other problems can be resolved by a British government with a majority. I hope, as will come as no surprise, that that would be a Labour government. But any government with a majority which doesn't cling to the fringes of the orange sashes of the DUP will be able to resolve customs and trading arrangements. England's difficulty is historically Ireland's opportunity, and now is the time to prove it.